evening, wonderful viewers from wherever you're watching us. It's always good to be back on this platform. Now, of course, this is the first edition of the one-to-one program coming to you on QTV on our studios on Caraba Avenue. And this program is going to focus on government ministries, departments, agencies, and it's going to focus on their policies, programs, and of course, the challenges that are hindering the progress of the National Development Plan. Wherever you're watching us from, many thanks indeed for the pleasure of your company. And I am your host, Julden Jai. And our first guest for this program is Boubacar Ousmaila Diouf, the Minister for Trade, Regional Integration and Employment. Good evening, Mr. Diouf, and welcome to the program.
Good evening, Julde. Good evening, viewers, and thank you very much for having me. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, Mr. Diouf, like I said, you're the first guest on this platform, and we're going to focus on the Barrow's State of the Nation address, which he did recently. So we're just going to start with you giving us an overview of what actually is Gambia's trade policy.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure being here on behalf of my team back at the Ministry of Trade, Industry, Regional Integration and Employment to expand on the State of the Nation address reflecting our sector of government. Trade policy in the Gambia at the moment is one that is very, very, very friendly to investment, very friendly to regional trade that is targeting markets beyond the borders of the Gambia. But of course, documents are living instruments, and work is currently going on. That's why the President quoted it in his statement to upgrade the current trade policies, the national trade policy, to sort of factor in areas that require adjustment, particularly issues around bilateral trade between us and Senegal, between us and Guinea-Bissau, but also looking beyond these two countries to do business with countries beyond this confinement. So it's within the ECOWAS region. With the coming up of the AfCFTA, we require new parameters to deal with the new realities that these opportunities are bringing to our trade environment. Yeah.
So when you talk about the National Trade Policy 2024-2029, what are the key features that we are looking at here as far as the policy is concerned?
I've already talked about the bilateral agreements, but also within that, trade preferences. You have preferential trade areas or trade access to certain markets that we want to develop. We want to ensure that the policy accommodates them and makes it possible for us to deal with countries as a country, but also deal with other countries within the framework of ECOWAS and within the framework of AfCFTA. You know, AfCFTA is a free trade area, but the ECOWAS region is a common customs union. So the two need to speak to each other within the framework of Gambia's business environment. So the new adjustments will be looking at this and ensuring that there is alignment.
So currently, how is our trade imbalance, and what are the corrective policies or measures that we really need to, put in place to address these issues?
For a very long time, this trade imbalance has been characterized by a higher import basket than our exports, meaning we are bringing into this country more than we are taking out. That explains a lot for the Minister of Finance to expound on when he comes in, as it has a bearing on foreign exchange, it has a bearing on maybe inflation and other things. But this imbalance actually is one thing the new policy adjustments should be trying to address through supportive measures to enterprise development, through supportive measures to, for example, formalization of businesses. There is a huge presence of businesses that are not in the formal assessment or examination network. GRA is not aware of them. They are not within the area that we are able to collect data from, but they do exist. And we know they employ people. They probably may not be handling the employment requirements of institutions and organizations. So these are things that we need to deal with. That imbalance, the corrective measures include, for example, this formalization I just mentioned. If you're able to bring all the establishments in this country, look at all the workshops in this country. Wherever you turn, every street has either a fitter garage or a welding garage or a carpentry workshop. This is the informal sector, but there is a lot of employment going on. There is a lot of activity taking place in terms of production. That should be aligned with the overall business environment of the country, because this is part of the private sector. But at the moment, because of that disconnect, we are probably missing out on a lot of information that could change the figures in terms of the trade imbalance. Secondly, we, as a ministry, we have been talking about the need to address our productive base as a country. We need to export more than we are doing at the moment. Over a period of time, I can expect that probably there will be a balance if we are able to focus the efforts and energy required to ensure that agriculture, for example, we are producing enough food. We are producing enough in the areas that we have competencies in. Like we are doing a lot more in terms of agro-processing and value addition with the fruits, for example. Currently, you go out, you have jur, you have this mango, which is wasting, a very lovely, succulent fruit. We are unable to exploit maximally as a country. So without storage facilities, without, a very good way to preserve and prevent post-harvest loss, there is a possibility we'll continue losing on revenue in this area. But with agro-processing, with the attendant issues, infrastructure that is required being in place, you should be able to preserve them for some time. And within that framework, find a way to export them to markets where they are needed most. These are, products that you can make a lot of revenue out of. But not only in agriculture. We need to work on a productive base, looking at other sectors that we can do something about, particularly where we are skillful. And I'm sure when we come to industry and other things, you'll be asking questions about that. But this is how we can reduce the imbalance. And once we start exporting more, particularly in areas that relate to food, and reduce the import of food into this country. Well, currently we're importing everything, literally. Once you're able to do that, then you reduce the cost on imports. You reduce the cost on imports, you are preserving the foreign currency, you are reducing the pressure on the dollar, you are reducing the pressure on CFA, and you are increasing the strength of the dollar.
Very right. The president did mention that during the State of the Nation address that the Gambia is developing the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act Utilization 2023-2028. What does this act really entail?
Yeah, the AGOA is the Africa Growth and Opportunities Act, which is America's lifeline thrown at developing countries like ourselves to make use of one single opportunity and access to the American market with products originating from these countries, which is a very great idea. Gambia at some point qualified, then we had some issues with the criteria, but we are readmitted. That's the good news. We are readmitted into AGOA competence, I think since last year, and we have worked on the implementation strategy together with the American Embassy and our partners in the development world. We've worked on a strategy. The draft is virtually complete. It is ready at the moment. We have shared it with our American counterparts, and we are waiting their response regarding the applicability of this strategy, and then we'll be rolling out, which will give our Gambian private sector practitioners the opportunity to take their products to the American market directly and place them side by side with products that are coming from America and other parts of the world. And that's a great opportunity.
So what does this strategy entail?
The strategy entails basically those elements that will help the private sector players to meet the standards. You know, going to the American market, there are certain standards that you are required to meet. The strategy will help guide the ministry to share and sort of sensitize and build the capacity of the private sector together or in partnership with the GCCIs, the Women Chamber of Commerce. We work with these people to ensure that our people can design products that will compete with products from other parts of the world and even from America on American shelves in terms of packaging, in terms of the quality, in terms of the health requirements, the food and safety requirements. So all these things will be built in this strategy to ensure that when we produce, the American market is ready to receive products from the Gambia once we are able to establish rules of origin to confirm that these things were actually produced or value or processed in the Gambia or within the Gambian territory.
So what are the benefits and of course the challenges of this AGOA as far as Gambia is concerned?
Yeah, benefits, I mean, back to your previous question, it will enhance our exports. If it enhances our exports, all the attendant benefits I said in the previous answer will kick in. But also you are now increasing employment for the Gambians. You are improving on that particular industry by increasing employment, by increasing revenue, and then by direct implication, your obligation to the nation's development also correspondingly increases. Well, if your revenue goes up, but basically your obligations to national taxation and all these things also kick in, and that helps the government. So AGOA this opportunity presented by AGOA is one thing that the ministry is very, very passionate about, and we are doing everything to make sure we exploit it.
Like you mentioned, we already qualified for this AGOA, but we're still not exporting to America. And of course, one of the things that you mentioned, that is the issue of standards, as far as standards is concerned and all that. Aside from standard, what is hindering the country from exporting to America?
No, what I meant, the disqualification was some years ago, because America has a system to appraise governments, and they're looking at a variety of issues that's ranging from governance, from performance in the economy, human rights. So once they do the appraisals, they rate countries that are now entitled to the opportunity. So Gambia was readmitted to AGOA relations last year, if I can put it that way, so that we are now given the opportunity again to contest for the shelves in America so our products can go there. So that's when this strategy was developed by the ministry to ensure that we can now prepare the grounds, prepare our private sector to be players in the American trade environment.
Okay. As speaking of trade, the president mentioned that the Gambia is in an active space. In fact, they are in negotiations of the African Continental Free Trade Area. So what does this really mean when you say phase 2 of negotiations?
Phase 2 of negotiations is the second level. It all started with agreeing to have a free trade area. That negotiation has ended. AfCFTA is a flagship project of the African Union. Heads of state of Africa have realized that intra-Africa trade is very low comparatively. We are not more than 17% amongst ourselves in Africa, whereas the EU and other multi-state trade areas or trading areas have gone to 60, approaching 70% intra-trade. So for this to improve, amongst other things, including expanding markets for countries like ourselves, Gambia is not a huge market, admissibly, So one of the opportunities that we can give ourselves is to belong to a wider trading bloc. And that's why this AfCFTA is important and significant. So the second stage is now where we talk about the rules of trade. We are now talking about protocols. We are talking about what will make this free trade area work. And because it's a free trade area, meaning we will have our agreements to trade amongst ourselves tariff-free, but we'll still be entitled to our rights as countries to design our rules to establish, tariffs to deal with third-party countries. Countries within the AfCFTA can trade with the Gambia. You can produce your cement in the Gambia, produce your flour or your apparels or your textiles and sell them in Ethiopia without restrictions once you are able to establish rules of origin. So that's the kind of thing that AfCFTA is giving us. So that even though our population is less than 5 million, arguably, you will be able to target a population, a consumer market, a consumer population of nothing less than 1.3 billion people. So that's the kind of opportunity that AfCFTA presents to the Gambia, and the government of the Gambia is very much involved in the final stages of negotiations to move it to the final stage.
What are the other stages that are involved here as far as this is concerned?
No, at the moment, in fact, we are at the level where implementation has started. Some countries have started implementing aspects of the agreement. Gambia, well, this level of negotiations is just to finalize those things. Let me give you one example or two. I think there is discussion at the moment on the automobile, sector or industry in relation to motor vehicles or vehicles produced in Africa or spare parts of vehicles that are produced in the Gambia that needs to be, probably should be sold within the African continent in relation to our very comfortable habit or practice of bringing in used materials, used vehicles, used materials. How do you deal with that kind of situation? That negotiation is going on. Do you wake up one morning and rule out the use of used vehicles and ensure that every vehicle running on our roads is a new one? How do you do that? How does that impact other sectors that are thriving on used vehicles and used materials, but also how do we ensure rolling out enough industries to produce vehicles for the entire African continent? So these are the levels we are, but at the moment, there is no other stage beyond this. Implementation has started, and perhaps Gambia will find itself within the implementation of this agreement in the next couple of years.
So when you talk about, for the fact that you are almost at the implementation part, what is the level of awareness as far as this is concerned?
That is where we are heading, and that's why this one-to-one program is important, and many others in the media, that we will come out as a ministry to sensitize the public on how this can change the dynamics of our business environment. If you are producing for 2.5 million people, whether this is milk or detergents or whatever, and now you have an opportunity to place your product in every shelf of a supermarket or market in Africa, then the opportunity is far, 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 far greater than what you had before. So whatever you are doing with 2.5 million consumers, you now think of 1.3 billion consumers. And that's the opportunity this is presenting to Gambia.
How prepared are we as a country to take full advantage of initiatives like this?
I am personally worried sometimes about how well we will quickly hit the ground running with the AfCFTA. We still have a lot of work to do with developing industry, to not thinking of heavy-duty manufacturing. I'm not thinking we'll be manufacturing caterpillars and graders next year. But we need to work harder with the private sector to enhance our productive base. Back to what I said on the trade. It's important that we improve on how much we're able to produce, our creativity. And that's why the skills development approach that government is taking through the MOHAS, Ministry of Higher Education, Research, Science and Technology, is important for Gambians to embrace. That you cannot manufacture vehicles without skills. You cannot even do apparels. You cannot do jackets and sell to the US market through AGOA. You cannot do anything without developing these skills and being adequately competent so that you produce something that meets that standard that we talked about earlier, for you to be able to place your products side by side with products from other parts of the world.
Speaking of improving productivity and, of course, creativity of the young folk, recently the World Bank issued a report, which is the Human Capital Index of the Gambia. But the report stated that only 42.4% of Gambian children will attain their full potential when they grow up as adults. How is the ministry really, translating these figures to making sure that the productive sector, which are the young people, are fully empowered to take up these responsibilities?
If that is to be read to mean that only 42% of the population will be employed, that is one figure we will challenge as a ministry going forward. We will want to ensure that by the time we get there and the counting is done again, we are not limited to 42%. I tell you why. Some of these numbers are very difficult to establish. Number one, we realize that there is a lot of, looking at the definition of employment, let me start with that. You will realize that employability in this country may not be fully accounted for, because you may not have the mechanism in place to account for it on a, if you like, real-time basis. And that is why it's very difficult for us to know if those figures actually reflect the current situation. I do not have the competence to dispute their statistics, but what I have done is to institute a study by GBOS. Is currently going on. In fact, I was briefed recently on the survey. We are doing a labor force survey. The idea behind that is for us to get the latest figures, the recent figures in terms of employment. But in addition to that, we have, as a ministry, also taken measures to institute an electronic system of counting employees. If you look at the developed West, on a daily basis, they can give you the number of jobs created in a month. In this country, that is going to be difficult for me to do, to come to you every month and say, we created 160 jobs. I would love to see my President, Adama Barrow, go to television every day and read from his dashboard to say, we have created this number of jobs last month. And for that to happen, with the help of the Ministry of Digital Economy, which is currently working on e-governance aspect of our government, we hope at some point in the very near future, we'll have an automated system of counting jobs. When somebody is fired or resigns or retires or is demised, the system counts them out. When somebody is taken on board, the figure is updated upwards. Once you have that in place, then you have figures that you can refer to immediately, not figures that are being quoted. You don't know when the final analysis of that particular survey was done.
Okay, that will take us to a short commercial break. When we return, the program continues. So stay tuned.
You asked for it, and QCell is giving it to you with our new and improved Sunyu Bundle Mega Promo. Now you can get more data at cheaper prices. Buy any of our bundle packages and enjoy massive discounts. Dial *303# and enjoy browsing on the network with the biggest coverage. Buy a 20 megabytes data bundle for as low as $7 and 50 bottles today, or purchase bigger bundles up to 20 gigabytes. Yes, that's right, 20 gigabytes of data at your fingertips. With our mega promo bundles, you can browse more, chat longer, and stay connected on the go, anytime, anywhere. For more information, call our customer care on 111. QCell. We innovate. Others follow. Terms and conditions apply.
Technology has always been at the forefront of our lives, and the way we use it has evolved drastically over the years. With the advent of 5G internet, we are entering a new era of technological innovation that promises to transform the way we live, work, and play. 5G internet is capable of providing data speeds up to 100 times faster than 4G, making it the ideal solution for streaming high-quality videos, playing online games, and downloading large files on the go. 5G internet is already transforming cities across the globe, powering smart cities, self-driving cars, and virtual reality experiences that were once thought impossible. 5G internet is also paving the way for Internet of Things, allowing for seamless connectivity between devices and the creation of a truly connected world. For the first time in the Gambia, QCell is bringing tomorrow's technology to you today with the launch of QCell 5G Internet. Get ready to experience the out-of-this-world wonders of QCell's 5G Internet. For more information, call 111. QCell. We innovate, others follow.
Welcome back. If you are just tuning in, this is the one-to-one program coming to you on QTV, and I am your host, Julden Jai. And with me here is Babukar Usmaila Juf, the Minister of Trade, Industry, Regional Integration and Employment. And of course, we were talking about the issue of trade and, how the Gambia will benefit from the AGOA, and of course the need for more industries, for the need for more production, the need to standardize things as far as trade is concerned, as far as employment is concerned. You were talking about a very important point for the fact that the need for the Gambia to have an electronic system where they will be able to count jobs and all that. But we will delve more on that when we come to the issue of employment. Now we will focus on, we were talking about trade, the issue of the African Continental Free Trade Area, the benefits and of course the challenges associated with it. But now we shift our attention to, will the sub-region ever realize this African Free Trade Area?
I am a positive thinker. I'm an optimist, and I believe in Pan-Africanism. I have no reason to doubt the seriousness in our heads of state. They saw this need, they thought about it. A secretariat has been established already. It's in Ghana, just next door. Already more than 150 people have been employed in this institution. All they are doing every day is to find a way to make this work. There is a lot of advantage for Africa if we introduce this system. Intra-Africa trade is possible to facilitate without the most difficult hurdle that we have to overcome in global trade from an African perspective, which is how we deal with foreign exchange. If we are buying our commodities in currencies that are not ours, each time you want to buy anything, you convert your local currency to another currency, buy that product, and the exchange rate is determined by market forces. And you can argue that countries can sort of fidget and play with this at their advantage. But the baseline is that market forces determine the strength of those currencies. So to stabilize prices virtually becomes impossible. But with this kind of trade, and with my information that we are hoping at some point within this framework that we should be able to trade in our country's currencies, you will be reducing the cost of importation, you will be reducing the cost of trade, and that will be translated into reduction in the cost of living for the people. So I think it is a very important one that Africans cannot afford to miss out on, and I see this happening and in our lifetime.
Aside from these current agreements, what other bilateral and multilateral agreements that you think, the Gambia should explore and that will have a bearing on the Gambia's trade profile?
Julde, before you even go to AfCFTA, we have this customs union, which is ECOWAS. Now, ECOWAS presents an opportunity, a fabulous one. And from 1975 to date, there's been a lot of agreements that our governments have signed and ratified at National Assembly level, so they are law. Once the National Assembly agrees and ratifies something, that becomes part of our legislative system. And ECOWAS presents similar opportunities for us to benefit from free movement of goods, free movement of persons across our borders. This is one opportunity that we all need to embrace. And AfCFTA recognizes the significance of these regional customs unions, whether it is SADC in the south or COMESA in the east or ECOWAS in the west. They recognize the significant role that these trading blocs present to particularly forming the foundation for AfCFTA to flourish. So really, I think ECOWAS is one thing. But apart from that, coming closer home, we have close relationship. I'm sure you will want to take this conversation to regional integration. Sure. Our relationship with Senegal, we have bilateral, discussions and agreements with Senegal that will facilitate trade. We are currently in discussions to work on an agreement between the ministry and our counterparts in Senegal. If feasible, what we want to see is a trade agreement between us and Senegal. It's the country that we trade most with, without borders. You go to Lumos, the fullers with their cattle are not bothered about restrictions at the customs. They just cross the border from Sare something to Sare something. So it's okay that we have that in place, but it has been formalized to certain levels. But we want to see that expanded to other countries within the sub-region. So all these agreements are just to facilitate trade, because trade is the basis for any economy to thrive. We must empower the private sector to trade either in goods or services and ensure that we pay our taxes. That's how governments survive.
Moving to regional integration, of course, earlier that you mentioned the need for more industries to produce more things, to export more produce from the Gambia to other countries. What are the main industries that we have in the Gambia?
Well, the main, currently we have a milling industry, for example. We have two of them that are the major ones. You have cement, you have other industries, you have the detergents. Let me talk maybe about two of them or three. You have the in agro processing, you have the cashew industry, although at its nascent stage. But all these industries are developing. But let's talk about the milling one, for example. Flour in this country for more than a decade. I mean, the flour, the bread we've been consuming, the pancake and all these things, is all coming from flour produced in country. Of course, the raw material is coming from outside. All these things would have to be looked at against the framework of efficiency in doing business, ease of doing business. And the question must be asked, how efficient, would we be more efficient if we are to produce wheat? Can we have other people focus on wheat rather than the wheat coming from Ukraine and Russia for us to bake our bread and all these things? But that's another discussion for another day. But that's one industry where, as a country, we are producing for our domestic consumption. But should it end there? No. Should it stop there? No. We are looking forward to the day in the very near future when trucks will be loading flour from GMC or Nassim in Banjul and ferrying cement across the border beyond Guinea-Bissau to Liberia, to Sierra Leone, to Guinea-Conakry, Burkina Faso, all these landlocked countries. We have the capacity. Those machines, I've visited those two factories and I know they have the capacity to export. That will enhance employment creation. We've had the foam factory in this country for more than 3 decades, I understand. And they've been producing quality, foam until the disaster struck, at the beginning of this year. All these industries, but also detergents. We had Sankung Sila and Sons in the past.
That is dead now.
Unfortunately, it's not the only one. We've had, factories here that are gone. I know growing up and going to school in the greater Banjul area, I'd seen some manufacturing taking place, basic manufacturing. Today, those companies are no longer on our list of companies. But that's something we want to avoid. We want to ensure that there is sustainability and these companies have longevity. That's important.
How?
I was talking about
how are you going to ensure that there is sustainability?
No, you do that by creating incentives, which the ministry is doing. You give incentives to these industries so that they have an advantage in production. You give them the opportunity to produce beyond consumption, domestic requirements, and then you start exporting, and then all the things I said in the past, where you improve on, your foreign currency, you reduce your trade imbalance, all these things will kick in. So through those kind of incentives, government will now be enabling, empowering these industries to expand production. Once you expand production, you produce beyond your domestic requirements, it becomes natural that you look beyond your borders. And this is the kind of thing that we are currently seeing with flour. We are looking forward to the next step. We want to see the same thing with detergents. There are two interesting things happening with detergents. Soap is being produced somewhere around the Saro area, Denton Bridge. We also have another company coming up which is doing very well in terms of exports to Guinea-Bissau. I will have to remember the name of the company, but I know it belongs to a Fuller. One of your people has, and he's doing fantastic with this. So all these industries are sprouting, and we are looking forward to it. I mentioned cashew. Even during my trip to India, I was trying to lure Indian industries to come to Gambia and establish factories, processing, installations to process cashew and ensure that we are not exporting the raw materials, going forward. And that is going to help create more jobs. It's going to create opportunities for us to improve on our foreign exchange or foreign currency deposits. We will reduce our imports and increase on our exports. And that is important. That's important.
But Mr. Juve, you will agree with me that in as much as it's important that these factories are coming, and of course, even the dead ones are coming to life. But the main issues that most of these investors, or should I say company owners, manufacturers, that they are constrained is for the fact that the policy tools are not there to protect or promote our own locally grown products, goods and services. Because here foreigners can just come with their goods and services, and the competition wise will not be there will not enable our locally made produce to be able to compete with these people who are coming.
I can argue that the policy environment is in place. You see, the law provides enough guarantees for the minister to regulate without having to go to the National Assembly to legislate. So if that requirement, that necessity is presented to us, we have the leeway to produce regulation to support such industry in the short term exclusively. That is possible to do. The policy environment is in place. And we have been supporting indigenous industry. Perhaps there is never an opportunity for anyone to say, I have enough. So support can never be enough or adequate, but sufficient support will be provided to any industry we notice is coming up. This detergent company I was referring to, that I cannot remember the name, I know very well that we have been working closely with them. In fact, my trip to Guinea-Bissau in March, he was on my trip because he is one of the greatest exporters to Guinea-Bissau at the moment from the Gambia.
So policy-wise, you're saying that now as far as trade is concerned, are we expecting that maybe in terms of flour, because you mentioned that area is doing so well, are we expecting that, what is your ministry doing to ban the importation of flour into the country?
In fact, from 2013 or thereabout, I have to confirm that, this industry was protected, and it is still protected by the government of the Gambia. That's the kind of thing that we offer. We've just provided protection for the farmers, the women farmers, majority of whom are women farmers in this country who worked on vegetables in 2023. when their onions and potatoes were ready for the market, we did a study and found out what the quantities were through the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Welfare and their cooperatives on the ground, worked with our Ministry of Finance and the GRA. We looked at the quantities. We, of course, know trade data is available at my ministry regarding how much onions we consume and all these things per month. And the committee recommended a moratorium, meaning government protected the onions in the country from competition coming from outside for a period whilst these onions lasted. When we suspected 2 weeks ago that stocks were running low, there is still stock with M.A. Karafi, we understand. The others have sold. Nandus, sold theirs way before the moratorium. We lifted the moratorium to allow onions to come in. But you see, the way these things happen, onions in Senegal were coming in before the moratorium and distorting the market price. When we introduced our moratorium, Senegal also realized perhaps they were running short of onions, and they closed the border to stop onions from flowing into the Gambia. So that created some form of friction on the quantities for some time, but I think we have come out of that because we have received imported onions already in the country. So these are things that we do to protect, not only protect, but empower local industries to ensure we give them the support they require to grow.
Does your ministry have any plans of reviving the already dead in ministries or industries that were here in the Gambia and they were contributing so much?
No, we will be struggling to do that. Ministry's role is to facilitate trade and industry creation and expansion. But for us to find a way to revive the ones that are gone, like Chairman Seka, they were here, Sankung Silla, they were employing, there were a lot of them that today are not existing. The environment remains. The ministry will continue to work with the private sector representatives like GCCI and others to ensure whatever is possible to do to give these people the leverage they need to come back into the market space and play. We'll be happy to be a part of that. But the environment is there. Ministry will ensure that we always have that conducive environment for people to enter, particularly Gambians wanting to enter any industry and be a player. Recently, I was given information that somebody was coming in, one Sonko was coming into the Kasru processing industry. We already have the Park Kabas in Brikamo who are doing a great job. They have some capacity issues which we are working on together to improve on their machinery, precisely, so to speak, so that they improve the productive capacity of their factories. But a lot is being done to encourage local industry to grow.
So moving forward on the ECOWAS integration and of course the monetary union, what level are we as a country? Because we know that this has been going on forever. From 2005, it has been shifted, 2010, 2020, and now they're talking about 2027. How prepared are we?
My understanding of this, I would actually, some 20 years ago, be very positive, optimistic that at some point we'll be doing this. I insinuated this in my earlier answers that if you have to participate in global trade, and each time you have to bring a commodity, when your basket is net, everything you are eating comes from outside. But each time you need to buy a candle, you convert your currency to something else, you lose in that conversion. When you bring it, perhaps before you arrive, the exchange rate has become unfavorable and everything has gone up again. In that kind of environment, we have a problem. So we're all looking forward to the common currency being introduced. But you see, that's not for the Ministry of Trade. We will advocate. That is where we are limited to. But what I understand is there is a criteria. that the central bank and the Ministry of Finance are working on. And anytime you have the Minister of Finance, don't forget that question. He is competent enough to give you the sufficient answer that you require regarding what is holding the common currency. The rest, I think, will be determined by them.
In terms of employment, the president did mention that Gambia is going to, they promised to have 150,000 or 150,000 jobs in 5 years. How are you going to do that?
You see, first of all, Julde, the 150,000 jobs does not mean the government of the Gambia employing 150,000 people. It is the government of the Gambia coming with this strategy to enable the private sector to employ 150,000 people. Now, currently, like I told you about, our inability to assess and record and document employment, on a real-time basis makes it difficult for me to know at this point how much of this 150 we have even achieved in 2023 alone. In the tourism sector, in the agriculture sector, in the health sector, going to gender. All this is happening, but we are having a problem with an accurate count. But how this 150? Let me come back to that. How the 150 will be attained? We started with developing a strategy for implementation of the policy. And that strategy talks about significant things. I talked about the formalization. That formalization is important. It should improve on the basis for employment to be created. Government is focusing, number two, on skills development. The youth, several times people talk to me, look, the youth are unemployed. And I will counter argue and say, yes, the youth is unemployed. Come to us and tell us where they are and what is it that they want to do? What is it that they want to be involved in?
To justify that, Mr. Jove, according to the latest World Bank report, they're saying that 37% of the young people aged 15 to 24 are neither in employment, training, or in education. And these are the backbone of the country.
Yes. And that's why we are working as a government on this skills development. Over the next 2-3 years, you're going to see skills centers established across all regions of this country.
But that has been the promise from the initial, from the beginning of this government, that they're going to establish skill centers, they're going to do that, they're going to do that. But for far too long, young people are saying that they don't think that dream of, realizing their full potential will come to light as far as this government is concerned.
I can see your passion because you belong to this category of the youth, and now you're becoming fiery. On a very serious note, if you invite the Minister of Higher Education, he has a long list of activities that they have embarked on recently, but I can remember a few that I know. I know there's been efforts to develop or build skill centers in some centers. That was a challenge. Now we are expecting them to roll out. There is this establishment of a new university called the USET, which is MDI converted to a University of Science and Technology. And that university is going to focus mainly on skills development. You see, there is also a lot of deliberate effort to ensure there is alignment between the curriculum of this country and the employment market. You see, because if University of the Gambia, University of Science and Technology, the American International University, all of them produce people, but we are not paying attention to what skill sets they graduate from at the end of the production line. In relation to what requirements there are in the employment market, we have a problem. People leaving school and the employers complaining that they cannot find the people they want to employ. I can give you a typical example. Recently, I visited Tough City. And he said to me, Minister, if you give me 20,000 workers, 5,000 carpenters, 5,000 masoners, 5,000 plumbers, 5,000 electricians, I will build 100 homes per year and I have the market for it. But they are not there to a level they were even
And who is to be blamed for that?
No, I am not going to enter a blame game. What I know is that the skill centers existed. There has been one in
But they are no more.
No, they are there. Pakalindin.
But they are not utilized.
It's the utilization is to another level. It's for you and I to walk in and get trained in a particular domain. The institutions exist. The hotel school was here when I was going to school.
And it's still here.
It is still here. They're still producing. But how many of us are going in to acquire these skills? That's the emphasis I'm making. The institutions exist, and in fact, they are being increased. That is the emphasis I'm making. Ministry of Higher Education, through their TVET approach, is increasing the centers where we can go and acquire skills that we can utilize. And again, employment is not all about white or blue-collar jobs. We are thinking entrepreneurship, and the strategy we developed for these 150,000 jobs emphasizes that. You should be able to come up with a creative idea as an individual, as a young person, work with the ministry, work with GAIPA, work with GCCI to be given the requisite backup you need to go on and employ yourself. You are now counted as employed and employ other people. These are things that the strategy is encouraging. There is a committee that has been set up, which is the National Policy Technical Committee. Which is very important. That committee brings together private sector and us, and the inauguration will take place very soon. We've identified the participants in this, and that is going to be an opportunity for the private sector and civil society to be involved in discussing the strategy in relation to what is happening and outcomes of the labor survey, outcomes of this World Bank report that we are talking about, and advise me so I can go to cabinet and talk and report to a ministerial committee which has been set up by government to show you how much we are very, very, very serious, showing seriousness towards this policy to ensure that we improve on employability and employment in this country.
Mr. Juve, you will agree with me that for far too long we've been implementing policies, programs. In fact, as a country, I think we are so good at, making policies, coming up with policies, programs, but the implementation part of it is always the problem. What assurance are you giving to the Gambian people that once these policies and programs, once they are implemented, we will see the much needed change as far as employment, integration, and of course our industries are concerned?
I can only be positive, and my role is to sit there as a policy, not a policy expert, but somebody in charge of policy by law, to ensure that things are working in the direction we expect as a government. And failure of that, I have a responsibility to go back to the drawing board with my technical team to tweak whatever policies we have in place to ensure we address the issues we are talking about. In relation to the employment, the technical committee, I'm very positive because the people we are talking to are the people in this country we can all look up to guide the process. And that, for me, is important. Whether this will bring the results, I can guarantee that I am positive. Whether it will happen depends on the future, and we'll give it a chance and see.
Thank you very much, Mr. Juve. That was the Minister of Trade, Industry, Regional Integration and Employment. I'm afraid that's all we got time for. We have lots of issues out to talk about, but I'm sure this will not be the last time that we will talk about these issues. It's a continued discussion, and we will continue talking about these issues until we see the much desired goal that we are all looking for. Many thanks indeed for the pleasure of your company. That's all we have time for. Join us next week for another episode of The One to One with me, Julden Yai. Thank you.